We continue now at the top of Daf 100b Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 100b. The Brisa here continues. Derech harabim, a path for the public. How wide is that? Sheish esrei amos, it's 16 amos. And Derech Ari Miklat, a path to get to the Ari Miklat. Let's say somebody has to run to the Ari Miklat because they killed someone by mistake. So that's double the Derech harabim. That's Shloshim Ushtayim amos. That is 32 amos wide. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, my crow, what is the pasuk that indicates this? Because it's written in the pasuk, Tachin L'cha Haderech, Derech Haderech. It says, prepare the road, and we darshan from the word Haderech, that it should be larger than a regular public road, so it should be 32 amos wide. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Derech HaMelech Ein La Shir. The Mishnah said that the path for the king, there is no maximum amount. And the Gemara explains, Shamelech Poretz Geder, because the king, he can knock down walls, knock down fences, lasos, lo derech, in order to make a path for himself. Ve'ein memachin biyado, and no one is able to protest against him. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Derech HaKever, the path for a burial, means the burial procession, Ein La Shir, that also has no maximum shir. And the Gemara says, Mishum Yikra Deshichva, that's because of the honor, or for the honor of the dead. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, HaMaimid Dayonit Tzipore Amru Bas Dalet Kabin. The Maimid, that's the area for a Maimid. They would stand in honor of the mace. So the judges of Tzipori, they say that that should be an area of land that you would plant 4 kav of seeds. And the Gemara says, Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Hamocher Kivro, if a person sells his gravesite, or Derech Kivro, or the path to his gravesite, or Makom Amado, the area where they're going to have the Maimid, Ubeis Aspedo, or the house where they're going to have the eulogy. Boin B'nei Mishpacha V'koverno Sobal Korcho. The people of the family can come and bury him in his burial site against his will, Mishum Pagam Mishpacha, because otherwise it's considered a Pagam. It's considered to be something that doesn't look good for the family, that this person is not being buried in the family area of the burial site, and so therefore they can take back that burial site and bury him over there. Of course, they'd have to pay the person who bought the site, but again, because of Pagam Mishpacha, they can take that site back. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught, "Ein pochsen mishiva ma'amodos umoshavos lemes." You don't do less than 7 standings and sittings for the dead. The Gemara will describe this soon, but essentially these were the ma'amodos that they did in honor of the mace. And where do we get this number 7? Keneged hevel havolim amar koheles. It says in the pasuk, Hevel Havolim Amar Koheles. We're going to darshan every time it says Hevel. So Hevel is 1, Havolim is another 2. That's 3. Hevel Havolim Hakol Hevel. Then it says at the end of the pasuk again Hevel Havolim, which is another 1 for Hevel, another 2 for Havolim, and Hakol Hevel is another 1. That adds up to a total of 7. And the Gemara continues. Amarle Ravacha Brei the Rav Ravashi. Ravacha the son of Rava said to Ravashi, Hechi Avdi. How do they do these ma'amadas? How does it work? Amarle said back to him, Kedetanya. It's like we learned in a brisa. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says in the Brisa, Yehuda Barishon Elohei Pochsin Mishiva Ma'amados and Moshavos Lameis. In Yehuda originally they didn't do less than 7 Ma'amados and Moshavos for the dead. Kegon, for example, they would say as follows: Imdu Yikarim Amoda, they would say stand Yikarim, stand precious one, stand, and Shavu Yikarim Shavu, they would say sit precious one, sit. Essentially, they would stand up and they would sit down. And the Brisa continues, Amru Lo, the rabbi said back to him, they said back to Rabbi Yehuda, Imkain, if that's all you're doing by the Ma'amados and Moshavos, you're just saying stand and sit, so af b'Shabbos mutter lasos kain. Even on Shabbos that should be mutter, but we generally don't do the Ma'amados on Shabbos, so it would seem that there's something more, some more of a eulogy that's actually being done, which prevents this from being done on Shabbos. And the Gemara continues, Achase de Rami Bar Papa have a Nesiva Leila Rav Avia. The sister of Rami Bar Papa was married to Rav Avia. Shechiva, so she died. And Ovidla Maimed a Moshav, he made for her in her honor a Maimed and a Moshav. Amar Rav Yosef said, Ta Betarti, he actually made 2 mistakes in doing the Maimed and Moshav. Ta Shein Osen Ela Bekrovim, he made a mistake because it's only supposed to be done with relatives. V'hu Avad Afila Berachokim, but he did it even with non-relatives. V'ta, and he also made a second mistake, Shein Osen Ela B'yom Rishon, you only do it on that first day, the day of the burial. V'hu avad b'yom sheni, he actually did it on the second day. He did it on the wrong day. Abaye said, B'ha namita, he made another mistake as well. Sheinos and ela bebeis hakvaris, you're supposed to do it in the cemetery. V'hu asa ba'ir, he did it in the city. Rava said, B'ha namita, he made another mistake. Sheinos and ela b'makom shenagu, it's only supposed to be done in a place where that is the local custom. V'hasam lo nag, and there in that place, that was not the custom. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, they have a question from the following brisa. Amru lo, they said to him, Im kain af b'Shabbos mutter lasos kain. This is the brisa we just brought above, the Chachamim, they said back to Rabbi Yehuda, if that's all you do by Ma'aben and Moshav, you just say stand up, sit down, so even on Shabbos it should be able to be done. V'yamrid bebeis hakvar, so v'yom aleph. Now if you're going to say, like we just said above, that Ma'aben and Moshav should be done in the cemetery on the first day when the mace was buried, so beis hakvar is b'Shabbos, my boy, so what are you doing in the cemetery on Shabbos? You don't do burials on Shabbos. In other words, it sounds like from the fact that they respond that if that's all Ma'aben and Moshav is, then it should be mutter on Shabbos. It sounds like in theory it could be done on Shabbos, but it can't be done on Shabbos if it's done on the day of the burial, because burials are not done on Shabbos. So how is it that their response even makes sense? And the Gemara says it could make sense, because Be'ir hasmucha lebeis hakvaros, because we're talking about a city that's near the cemetery, the amtoyu bein hashmashos, and they brought the mace to be buried right before Shabbos, bein hashmashos, right before Shabbos was starting, and so in that situation, that actually still would be considered the first day, even though it's still Shabbos, it's Friday night, but that's the very same day of burial, and so that could be an example where in theory you could do the Ma'amen and Moshav on the first day, on Shabbos, and that's why the Chachamim said, if that's all there is to a Ma'amen and Moshav, it should be able to be done on Shabbos. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hamocher Mokum L'Chaveru Lasos Lo Kever. If somebody sells an area to his friend, he wants this person to construct for him a kever, a burial. As we'll see, this is like a cave with crypts. V'chein Hamekabel Mechaveru Lasos Lo Kever. Somebody receives, the person already has the property, and somebody gets instructions. He's hired as a worker to build for him this kever. So Osa Tocha Shel Ma'ora Dalet Amos Al Sheish. So first you have the inside of the cave is going to be 4 by 6 amos. Uposeach L'Socha Shmona Kuchen. And then in this cave, you're going to have 8 kuchen, shalosh mikan v'shalosh mikan, ushnayim mikanegdan. You're going to have 3 on one side, 3 on the other side. In other words, you walk into this cave, on the right side of the cave and the left side of the cave, so to speak, you're going to have 3 of these kuchen, ushnayim mikanegdan, and then 2 right in front as you walk into the cave. That's a total of 8 kuchen. And the Mishnah continues, v'kuchen, now the kuchen themselves, how large were they? Each one of these kuchen is enough to fit 1 mace. So it's going to be arkan arba amos, the length is going to be 4 amos, v'ruman sheva, and the height is going to be 7 tvachim, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kof Aleph Amud Aleph.